Us now is Darrell Issa, Republican of California and member of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, which is going to hold a hearing later today, this morning actually, on the Blackwater investigation. Here are the headlines in the Washington Post this morning. Other killings by Blackwater staff detailed, 195 escalations of force found. The New York Times report says firm tried cover-ups after shootings. State Department criticized a House panel portrays Blackwater in Iraq as trigger-happy.
You know, Henry Waxman cannot say things about our military men and women, so he's choosing this as another way to oppose the war. You know, very clearly, Chairman Waxman has an agenda. The bodies really weren't cold before he began this investigation. We have not yet gotten a full State Department report. The FBI is doing a separate report, basically holding Blackwater to a high standard. But I think the important thing really happened last week. If you look at the denouncing by the House of Representatives overwhelmingly of General Petraeus, and then basically unanimously in the Senate, Henry Waxman and key members of this committee stood out because they were not going to take back what MoveOn.org had said about General Petraeus. They're certainly on a hell-bent to say that this war is illegal and immoral, and Blackwater is just easier to attack directly by members of Congress than would be our men and women in uniform.
Well, let's go back to Blackwater, because you and others wrote a letter to the chairman asking him to postpone this hearing.
To let the process go forward the way it's supposed to. We're supposed to allow the administration to do its investigation, and then we do oversight. We're not investigators. If Henry Waxman today wants to go to Iraq and do an investigation, Blackwater will be his support team, his protection team. Do you think he really wants to investigate directly?
Critics would say your committee is named the Oversight Committee, and that if it's true that the State Department or Blackwater has been covering up some of the incidences there, isn't it Congress's constitutional duty to have oversight over this security firm since Congress appropriates the money?
Oversight is oversight of the administration. It's not oversight of individual crime scenes. I'm not defending Blackwater. I have absolutely no special information on what happened that day while they were protecting a USAID individual at that intersection. What I do know is that our job is to find out if the administration, not just for this incident, but for countless incidents, is doing their job. We do that with IG reports. We do that with separate investigation teams. We do that because we're looking over the executive branch. We're not the cops on the street trying to find out who started the fist fight.
Let's put the phone numbers up for our callers. Republicans 202-737-0002, Democrats 202-737-0002, and Independents 202-628-0205. We're talking with Congressman Darrell Issa, Republican of California. Let's talk about Blackwater and their situation there. Should they be forced out of Iraq? What should happen to them if there is wrongdoing found?
If you force Blackwater out of Iraq based on one incident, you're basically waiting to force the next contractor out based on one incident, or for that matter, the 3 brigades that it would take to guard the State Department personnel there if Blackwater had to leave. This has been and continues to be an investigation about an attack on our operations in Iraq. Henry Waxman has no qualms about doing that. I just wish he'd be more honest and say he wants us out of Iraq and this is another way to do it.
But to counter that, though, the headline is 195 incidents of escalation of force found, not just one.
Well, 195 escalation of force. I have no problem with that. That's 195 times that Blackwater people have been attacked. You know, the first investigation we did in this committee was on 4 Blackwater personnel, special ops, SEALs, the best the military ever produced, who died early on in the war, coming in as civilians to try to help protect people in Iraq. The amazing thing is you can't say, my goodness, the best and the brightest died in Iraq, and then turn around and say, oh, but these guys are just trigger happy. Henry Waxman went out of his way to put the widows and orphans of 4 prior service, really decorated private service individuals, put them in front of us to say this war is rotten and immoral. Now he's going to bring back the CEO of Blackwater, essentially, instead, forgetting about the fact that these were 4 of the best and the brightest who died, whose widows and orphans were in front of our committee, and now he's going to come back and say these are just trigger happy. Were those 4 individuals that died in Fallujah trigger happy? Or, in fact, is he trying to have it both ways? I want to investigate serious mistakes by this administration. They occur in the Department of Interior. They occur in the Department of Defense. They occur everywhere. Our job is so important and our time is so limited that we shouldn't be going into areas in which there's so much unknown, when in fact you can investigate where the administration's already had their chance, and now you're trying to say, let's not just have oversight, but let's have reform. What reform is going to come from today's hearing? It's a grandstanding by Chairman Waxman on behalf of Speaker Pelosi.
Before we get to our first phone call, what rules do Blackwater and other security firms have to live under? Do they follow Iraqi rules? Do they follow United States rules?
Greta, I certainly hope they don't follow Iraqi rules. General Jones and the former Chief Ramsey, of a prominent Democrat, obviously, from here in D.C., just came back and said that the police force in Iraq should be disbanded. They are so corrupted by Shia extremists who kill their fellow Iraqis that 300,000 need to be disbanded and rebuilt from scratch. So certainly we don't want them following Iraqi rules. What Blackwater in this case is following is State Department rules. State Department sets the rules of engagement. State Department determines, for example, that when they were moving this individual after a bomb blast, that they were to secure that turnstile, that large rotary similar to what we have here in Washington, as a matter of bringing that protected individual out. As they did so, vehicles approached, presumably with bombs, and there was a conflict. At the end of the investigation, it may or may not be a completely legitimate battle. But you know what? Our troops every day get blown up by IEDs, get blown up by car bombs that drive up to them. And yes, in these situations, the Iraqis know that if you drive past a checkpoint as they're waving you off, you will be shot, you will be killed. That's because we're in a war over there. This is not a mop-up operation. This is still a war.
First phone call for the Congressman. Caddy texts his Republican line. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a Republican. I was a Republican, and now I'm ashamed to be a Republican. You are talking about Henry Waxman all the time. I want very clear understanding as to why there is no rules, clear, transparent rules.
Thank you.
Go ahead, caller, finish.
Hello?
Go ahead and finish, please.
Why is there no transparent rules for Blackwater or all of the security officers there? They are harming our reputation. The Prime Minister of Iraq has told them to get out, and they should get out. And why is it that the army is not protecting our people? And finally, the way to change Congress is to kick all the Republicans out. Thank you.
Well, certainly that wasn't a Republican on the Republican line, but plenty of people have an opinion that we should get out of Iraq. Henry Waxman has an opinion we should get out of Iraq and campaigned on it. Certainly Speaker Pelosi became speaker on that statement. The question is, are we holding an investigation, a public event, in order to say get out of Iraq? Fine. But that's a repeat of Vietnam. That's a repeat of, let's not talk about the substance, let's just have the demonstrations. In Vietnam, we used tens of thousands of contractors, no surprise. In Iraq, we're using contractors. The question should be, is the State Department providing the oversight? Are they satisfied with the various events of Blackwater? And by the way, if individuals, remember, these are mostly retired military. Their average military service with Blackwater and Triple Canopy, these other groups run about 10 years. Are these individuals doing something individually wrong, in which case they get removed just like a soldier or a Marine would? Is the group doing something wrong? Do they have rules that are wrong? That we're not going to hear that today. What we're going to hear is essentially that this is a bad contractor organization, kick them out. The very next day, it would be Triple Canopy. The very next day, it'd be some other group. It will take 3 more brigades of men and women from the states, active duty, to do this job. And oh, by the way, our tradition is not to have the U.S. military guard State Department personnel, so we're going to have to do something we don't normally do.
We had some technical difficulties on that last phone call, but we hope it's fixed. Denham Springs, Louisiana, Democrats line. Good morning.
Thank you, Greta, for taking my call. Thank you, and C-SPAN. I have 3 or 4 questions for Congressman Issa. After 6 years of no oversight by the Republicans, which you was chairman of the committee, if I'm correct.
Actually, you're not, but go right ahead, please.
I have 3 or 4 questions for Congressman Issa.
Sure, happy to take your question.
Caller,
Okay.
we have
Could you tell me-
limited time, so can you make it
All
2
right.
questions, please?
Could you tell me how much trouble that Blackwater has caused our military there by the differential in the pay that they draw and the pay that the military draws to pull them out of trouble? And how much influence does the Israeli lobby have on your office? And how much stock is owned by Carlyle Corporation in Blackwater, which is G.W. Bush?
Okay, caller, we'll leave it there.
Well, I think there are 2 questions that can be possibly answered. As far as I know, Blackwater is a separate corporation. It's not owned by Carlyle, but it's a private company. I don't know the details of that. I think when you look at the pay, that's a very legitimate problem. It's not just a problem for Blackwater. Contractors typically make more money than do our U.S. Servicemen and women. The interesting thing is the first hearing we had this year on Blackwater by Chairman Waxman, essentially what he was doing was downplaying that, because he was saying these people making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year died a few days in and they don't get anything, and making the case that Blackwater should pay not just the pay they do in order to get these individuals, but they should pay better death benefits. But certainly money is always a question, and the private dies for a lot less money, the same as a general. I personally resent the idea that someone's going to ask a question on the air about the Israeli lobby. I think when you question members of Congress' patriotism, it's no different than when MoveOn.org wants to question the patriotism of generals. If you want to do that at the ballot box. I would probably be the last person in the world that would be questioned about the influence of the Israeli lobby. I'm an Arab American. My grandfather came from Lebanon. I'm certainly not the poster child for the Arab lobby or for the Israeli lobby.
Let's talk about the hearing this morning. C-SPAN will be there as a program note to all of you. It will have live coverage on C-SPAN 3 this morning, and also on C-SPAN radio at 10 a.m. Who will be there, and what do you expect them to say?
Well, Eric Prince, the president and CEO, will be there. And essentially, he's going to go through, I assume, we've looked at some of his testimony already, he's going to go through item by item the events that occurred that day, because that's what Henry Waxman wants them there for. But as you can see from Waxman's releases and the direction, he's already made his mind up that 1,000 or more of these security people all have to go. It doesn't matter that the State Department hasn't said that, he said that. It doesn't matter that Secretary Rice went back to the Iraqi Prime Minister and to the very minister, Shia minister, who is accused of in fact being corrupted to the detriment of the Iraqi people, and said, no, we can't live without these people, and we can't live without these people because, notwithstanding 24 people involved in this incident, we can't operate and help Iraq get on a stable basis if we don't have the ability to move outside the green zone.
Next phone call, Virginia Beach. Good morning.
Yes. Hello, Representative Issa.
Good morning.
I commend your patriotism. I have 2 or 3 questions. Is it not true that when Henry Waxman went to Iraq, Blackwater guarded him?
Actually, it is true that he did it. I've been with Henry Waxman and the now Speaker when we went to Iraq, and it's sort of interesting that that when I was with then Minority Leader but now Speaker Pelosi, we had 15 Blackwater personnel, including snipers. You can see I did come ready for that question. Snipers, overhead air cover, protective people, EOD people. You know, you don't make a bomb disposal person overnight. So, and I was in EOD when I was enlisted. Those kinds of personnel, we would have to pull out of active duty ranks. And anyone that's familiar with the military knows you don't create a bomb disposal person overnight. We don't have nearly enough of them with these IEDs. But that's pretty typical. Virtually every congressional House and Senate organization that ever went into Iraq was guarded by Blackwater. And I don't want it to be about Blackwater, because whether it's Triple Canopy or any of the other private organizations, they tend to hire former military with special skills and bring them in to augment the active duty personnel, which quite frankly, Henry Waxman is the first to say we don't have enough of. He, like many others, are saying if you're going to continue this war, you have to have a draft.
What is it like to travel with these guys?
Overseas travel, you're talking about under Blackwater protection?
Yeah, and these other private security firms, not just Blackwater.
Well, you know, I've been in Israel, I've been in the West Bank, I've been in a number of areas in which you really do have a high threat level, and these people never smile. They take their job very, very seriously. The chances of having 2 words with them are pretty limited. Their guns are at the ready, and their job is exactly like the President's Secret Service. They are focused on getting their protected personnel in and out safely, and they overall do a pretty good job. Having said that, I'll tell you, member of Congress, used to walking freely around the Capitol, you do feel suddenly like you're in this cocoon where you can't even move. On the other hand, we haven't lost a member of the House or the Senate, and about half of Congress has been over to Iraq.
Charlotte, North Carolina, your next phone call. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. I was wondering, I have a couple of questions. I wonder where this guy gets his propaganda from. He knows that even our own soldiers have killed innocent people over there, and they're being tried right now. They spew, the Republicans have a thing of spewing propaganda. And he's the biggest liar since George Bush. And I wonder where they get this stuff out. And he had sense enough to mention Vietnam. There's a lieutenant there when I was there who opened up on innocent calls that people had nothing to do with, women and children.
Okay, caller,
Well,
let's get a response.
I think the caller deserves a response in spite of the fact there wasn't a question there. Look, every war has had misconduct by active duty personnel, by civilians. I think when you find that, you hold courts martials, you hold people accountable. It's interesting, though, that we've had a member of Congress who called active duty Marines based at Camp Pendleton baby killers, and so far, through a complete military process, half of them charges have been dropped. I don't want to be premature for or against anyone. If somebody commits a killing or any other action that is illegal or inappropriate to the rules that they've been given, lawful rules they've been given, they have to be held accountable. But I don't think any caller has the right to say, you know, that our men and women in uniform are going over there and indiscriminately killing. Even in Haditha and other areas, what you had in the series of accusations, the undeniable part of the facts are that, in fact, our troops were fired on and may have overreacted significantly, but that's the level of the accusation. We have not had one accusation that somebody just wanted to take a joyride and kill people. Just the opposite. It is reacting to fire or reacting to one of their comrades being killed just within minutes or days before.
We're talking with Congressman Darrell Issa, Republican of California. Next phone call, Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Republican line, you're on the air.
Good morning. I am so tired about hearing how many people we have killed over there when they killed 3,000 of our people in 9/11, the terrorists. And the Democrats at the outset have been against this war on terror. They have been anti-war, anti-military. They have denigrated our military. They've leaked secrets to the New York Times. And now they're starting on the private sector Blackwater. They protect our people over there. And, of course, during war, there are going to be deaths. And during war, there's going to be a little bit of waste, fraud, and abuse. But you have to take that into consideration. And as war changes, you change your tactics. And if you want to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, look at the big Democrat programs that we have in. My husband died a year ago, and I got for 1 year bills from Medicare, fraudulent bill for doctors that looked in on him that were...
Thanks, caller. Take her first part of her comments. Yeah. Should Congress accept some waste, fraud, and abuse and some killings in Iraq?
Well, we should never accept it easily. But the fact is that war is about effectiveness, not about efficiency. And we know that it costs an awful lot more to operate in a country like that. When a vehicle breaks down in a combat zone, sometimes you put a thermite grenade on it and walk away from it because you want to deny the enemy the vehicle and you don't want to stay around there to be a target. So there will be loss, inefficiencies. That we can accept. Do we accept random killings? Do we accept conduct that's inappropriate? Of course not. And I think what the caller may have been alluding to is, yes, people will die in the war, but every soldier knows that when you kill somebody, you create somebody who's going to want revenge. So we kill the minimum amount. As a matter of good military practice, you kill only those you have to kill because you don't want to create more family members who have stories about a family member who alive might have been a terrorist but dead is a martyr. And I think that's one of the reasons that whether it's General Petraeus or any of the commanders, we're doing lots of aid programs. We're building up water supplies. We're doing the things that win over hearts and minds because, in fact, we want to leave this war with people who thank us for giving them back their country. We don't want to leave this war with any more martyrs than absolutely are necessary.
Well, on that point then, get your reaction to the Iraqi Prime Minister says Blackwater shootings challenge his nation's sovereignty.
Well, I have a simple answer on Maliki, and that is that I think he's in the pocket of Iran. I think that his unwillingness to take on his own Shia organizations is the greatest threat to having a single Iraq. I, for one, will tell you, if Maliki doesn't begin cooperating, as he hasn't done with this president, President Bush has made it very clear that he's not getting the changes. They're not going in and voting, sharing their resources, and doing other things that are expected of democracies. If he doesn't do that, we're going to end up with 3 Iraqs. Maliki's going to have his Iran-based Iraq. The Kurds are going to have a separate region, and clearly Anbar province is not, the Sunnis are not going to tolerate being under the tyranny of a Shia police force that comes in and indiscriminately kills them. So when we look at who we can believe and who we can't believe, Maliki is among those that so far has given us no reason to believe that his intentions are for a united Iraq living in peace with all its relatives.
St. Simon's Island, Georgia, good morning.
Good morning. I'm taking my every 30-day call and calling in from both the very first call. I'm agreeing with you that there was obviously a Democrat that called in on the Republican line. I personally am a Republican. I am proud to be a Republican, and I will be voting Republican in the next election. I also agree with the wonderful lady from Michigan that just called, and about the liberal bias, basically in reporting. I think they jump on any negative report coming out of either Afghanistan or Iraq, and they continue to report on it, and they just continue to beat on it. Basically, I believe that what we're doing in Iraq is unfortunate, but absolutely necessary. And we need to be over there. We need to beat Al-Qaeda there. And the Democrats are on another witch hunt. And I hope you Republicans out there know that there are a lot of us out here. We back you, and we need you guys to stay strong. And we need for you guys to come out here and absolutely know that we're here.
Okay, caller, we'll have to leave it there because we have about 2 minutes left.
Well, I appreciate the caller's comments. I'm not sure there was a question, but hopefully it is not all about Republicans and Democrats. When you look at the vote to denounce MoveOn.org's action of questioning the patriotism, literally calling General Petraeus a traitor, the overwhelming majority of Republicans and Democrats voted to denounce that. Only 79 members decided that they wanted to side with MoveOn.org. So I think that you can't lump Republicans and Democrats completely together. We may disagree on how we got into this war. We may disagree, we clearly do disagree on whether this war was justified or not. What I think is important is we broke this country, and we own it until we get it fixed or until we're willing to abandon it to terrorism. And I think that's what brings together the need to figure out how to make private contractors work, how to make our military do their job with minimum casualties on both sides. And government oversight and reform is about looking at what happened and finding out how to make sure government does its job. We're not going to do that today. Today we're going to have a grandstand for the press. Unfortunately, we're doing it once again over the bodies of others.
Should Republicans use what you just said, that this is a grandstanding, that the committee is on a witch hunt, use that as part of the campaign 2008 strategy against Democrats to say that they've gone too far with investigations?
Well, you know, we haven't gone far enough with real investigations. Our committee is supposed to really look at all parts of government, including the Department of Interior and all these other parts. I want to do that. I'm committed to do that. When I was a subcommittee chairman, we uncovered over $10 billion of lost revenue from oil companies that the U.S. Treasury should have. By the way, we still don't have that because that got left behind when the House changed. I want to go after waste, fraud, and abuse. The point, though, is that the Government Oversight Committee should go after it at the most efficient time because we only have so much time. We're going after this at the best news time, but the least effective time to find out what really happened. The least facts are in, but the most press coverage is going to happen today.
Jacksonville, Florida, Republican line. Good morning.
Good morning. I wish somebody would look into the President Clinton giving China, Communist China, the missile guidance system, allowing them to have the ICBM. Goodbye.
Well, certainly the Loral incident was more than looked into. It wouldn't hurt to make sure to circle back and make sure it's not happening again. But that is an example, the caller I think was referring to, of where government had not done its oversight on a civilian contractor. Transfers of technology occurred, and that is something where we should make sure that the systems are in place going forward, that it doesn't happen again. It's the nature of our branch of government that we fund the president and then we check on the president. What we don't do is try to run every detail of the president's ability. I was a CEO for 20 years. The one thing that I know is that you can only have one CEO. But you can have a board of directors that regularly looks into mistakes and that holds the CEO accountable. That's what the Government Oversight Committee is supposed to do. That's what we were dedicated to do. Chairman Waxman, I'm still hopeful, will begin to do that. I want to hold this president and this administration accountable. I have no problem with that. But let's pick places in which we have the facts and we can make the changes so that not just this administration, but future administrations don't waste America's tax dollars.
Fishers, Indiana, Democrats line, your next phone call.
Hi, thank you. Just a couple points. I wish the Republicans would have been, so enthusiastic to do some oversight on this administration previously, but as a Democrat, I think this is a weak stand if, in fact, Mr. Waxman is going after Blackwater Day, to pick this issue to finally get some strength. I mean, out of all the issues, this is extremely weak, and it's a pretty sad showing from that Democratic Party. And I hope it's not a witch hunt. I'm from the military. I know what Blackwater does. I know their job is important, and I know those guys are professional, family-having Americans who are just trying to do a good job.
Congressman, your last thoughts? That was our last phone call.
Well, I know a lot of people think we didn't do enough oversight, and I agree with them. Looking back, you can always say we could have done twice as much. But I would say that when you look at the history, particularly of some of the subcommittees where I was working, we did a lot of oversight, but when we were doing the oversight and reform and holding administration people accountable, they tended not to be nearly as sensational. But I take the caller's statement as a good one, that government oversight and reform and all the committees should do much more, and Republicans should essentially agree that we did not hold our own president as accountable as we should have. I think the voters told that pretty loud and clearly in the last election, that they expect us to put the good of our branch and the good of our country ahead of the party that happens to be in office. And just to close, the reason for it is we're not supporting the president. We're looking at a bureaucracy that outlasts every administration. Most of the people that we saw doing wrongdoing in the last Congress were not appointed. They were, in fact, career individuals who knew they could outlast their predecessor and outlast the one that came after them. And generally, that's where the waste, fraud, and abuse builds up. And it's where the number one area for government oversight comes in, because Congress is forever while presidents come and go.
Congressman Issa, thank you for your time.